This is your fault. Don't provoke her. My son, Robert, yelled at me through the door as I desperately pounded on it, trying to get out of my own bedroom. I had just discovered that the keys to my apartment were gone, and it was no accident. My son had deliberately hidden them, so I couldn't escape the constant abuse from my daughter-in-law, Jessica. I'm leaving for work, and you better not cause any trouble, he continued yelling before I heard his footsteps fade down the hall. An hour later, he would return from work, and seeing the scene he would find in the living room, he would cry out in despair, "What have you done?" and rush toward the phone. But that part of the story was still to come, and I had no idea what awaited me. I'm Mary. I'm 66 years old, and I never imagined the day would come when my own son would turn me into a prisoner in my own home. The same home I bought with my savings from 40 years working as a nurse at the municipal hospital, the home where I raised Robert, with so much love after his father died when he was only 12 years old. It all started 2 years ago, when Jessica entered our lives like a destructive hurricane. At first, she seemed like the perfect daughter-in-law, educated, elegant, always with a smile that I now know was completely fake. She married my son after only 6 months of dating, and when they lost their apartment due to financial problems, I welcomed them into my home without hesitation. "Mary, you're an angel," Jessica would tell me at first, hugging me with that flawless performance she had mastered. "I don't know how to thank you for opening your home to us." How naive I was to believe every one of her sweet and manipulative words. The first few months were relatively calm, but little by little I began to notice small, unsettling details. Jessica always found a way to criticize everything I did. If I prepared dinner, she would comment that the food was too salty or too bland. If I cleaned the house, she would say I had left dust in places that were, according to her, obvious. If I bought something for the house, she would sigh dramatically and say I had no taste when choosing things. "Oh, Mary, I think that tablecloth looks really old-fashioned," she'd say with that fake smile while pointing at the dining room table. "And those green curtains are out of style. You should change them for something more modern." Every comment was like a small knife plunging into my self-esteem. My son Robert, who used to be my confidant and best friend, began to gradually change under his wife's influence. Jessica had a diabolical ability to whisper things in his ear when she thought I wasn't listening. "Your mum is getting older, Robert," she'd say in a low voice while they were washing the dishes. "Maybe we should make more decisions ourselves, to protect her." That word, protect her, would become her favorite weapon to justify every intrusion into my life. Slowly, Jessica began taking control of different aspects of my home. First, it was reorganizing the kitchen to make it more efficient. Then she started receiving my bills and helping me pay them. After that, she began suggesting that maybe I shouldn't manage my own bank account anymore because, at your age, it's easy to make mistakes with numbers. "Mum, Jessica is right," Robert would tell me when I protested. "She studied business administration. She knows these things better than us." My own son had begun talking to me as if I were a child incapable of making my own decisions. The situation worsened when Jessica began intercepting my phone calls and controlling my visitors. When my sister, Susan, called to invite me to lunch, Jessica would pick up the phone and say, "Oh, Mary isn't feeling too well today. Better make it another day." When my friends from the hospital came to visit, she would greet them with a look of annoyance and tell them I was resting. "It's just that Mary gets so tired lately," she'd explain with that sugary voice she used to deceive everyone. "The doctor says she needs a lot of rest." Of course, I had never been to any doctor who said such a thing, but my friends believed her because Jessica knew exactly how to manipulate every situation. Slowly, I realized I was being isolated from my entire outside world. My outings were limited to going to the grocery store, and only when accompanied by Jessica, who controlled every purchase I made. "You don't need that much detergent, Mary," she'd say, removing products from the cart. "And this brand of coffee is too expensive. We should get this other one." It was as if my own life was being slowly reduced until it became an existence controlled by someone who showed her true colors more and more each day. But the worst was yet to come, and that morning, when I discovered my keys were missing, I realized Jessica's plan was much more sinister than I had imagined. The first time Jessica physically abused me was on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks before my son decided to hide the keys to my apartment. I was making breakfast when she entered the kitchen like a wild animal, with bloodshot eyes and disheveled hair. Without saying a word, she shoved me against the table so hard that I spilled hot coffee on my hand. "You stupid old woman," she screamed while I was running cold water over my burn. "You do everything wrong. This house is a mess because of you." Her words were like knives, but the physical pain on my burned hand didn't compare to the humiliation I felt in my heart. When Robert got home from work that night, I ran to him to tell him what had happened. I thought my son would defend me, that he would take my side as he had always done throughout his life. How wrong I was. "Mum, it was probably an accident," he said without even looking at the burn on my hand. "Jessica told me you provoked her first, that you said very nasty things to her." My eyes filled with tears when I realized that my own son had chosen to believe her instead of me. "But Robert, I never said anything bad to her," I tried to explain. "She just came in screaming and pushed me for no reason." My voice broke when I saw the expression of distrust in his eyes, the same eyes that used to look at me with so much love and respect. "Mum, you've been very confused lately," he replied with a coldness that shattered my soul. "Maybe you should rest more, or we could even take you to see a doctor." The way he said those words made me understand that Jessica had already been working on his mind long before that incident. From that day on, Jessica's aggression became more frequent and more cruel. One day she threw me to the floor while I was sweeping the living room, telling me I was raising too much dust and that it gave her allergies. Another day she yanked my arm so hard that she left bruises, because according to her, I was taking too long in the bathroom and she urgently needed to get in. "If you tell Robert anything, it's going to be worse for you," she would threaten after every assault. "He already thinks you're losing your mind, so anything you tell him will only confirm that you need medical help." Her malicious smile gave me the chills because I knew she was right. Jessica had managed to convince my son that I was developing mental problems. "Look how she forgets things," she would say, pointing to objects that she herself had moved. "Yesterday, she put the apartment keys in the refrigerator, and when I asked her why, she said she didn't remember doing it." Of course, I had never put the keys in the refrigerator. Jessica had put them there to discover them later in front of Robert and make him believe I was losing my memory. It was a strategy as cruel as it was effective. The humiliations extended beyond our home. When we went to the grocery store, Jessica made sure that employees and other customers witnessed my supposed episodes of confusion. "Mary, don't you remember we already bought milk?" she'd say loudly while feigning concern. "You're taking 2 cartons of milk, but we already have 3 at home." I knew perfectly well that there was no milk at home. But when I tried to defend myself, Jessica would interrupt me with that sweet, condescending voice she used in public. "Oh, my dear mother-in-law, don't worry. Everyone has difficult days." People would look at us with pity, but their compassion was for her, not for me. Financial control came gradually, but relentlessly. First, Jessica convinced Robert that she should manage the household expenses because she had more experience with numbers. Then she suggested it would be easier if she had access to my bank account to pay the bills directly. "It's for your own security, Mum," Robert explained, while I signed the papers Jessica had prepared. "That way you don't have to worry about due dates or calculating amounts. Jessica takes care of everything." What my son didn't know was that his wife had already started transferring small amounts of money to her personal account, amounts so small that I didn't notice them at first. One day, I discovered that $300 had disappeared from my savings account. When I confronted Jessica, she looked at me with that feigned innocence I knew so well. "Mary, you're imagining things," she said calmly. "Maybe you spent that money and don't remember it. See why it's better if I handle the finances." I ran to Robert to tell him about the missing money, but he had already been prepped by his wife for that conversation. "Mum, Jessica told me you've been very paranoid about money lately," he said without even checking the bank statements. "She explained that it's normal for people your age to have these kinds of unfounded worries." That night, as I cried in my room, I realized I was completely alone in my own house. My son had been completely manipulated by a woman who had a very clear plan: to take possession of everything I had built during decades of honest work. Jessica began making comments about the value of my apartment in front of occasional visitors. "This area has appreciated a lot," she'd say, while serving tea to the few friends who still dared to visit. "Mary is very lucky to have such a valuable property, although at her age she can no longer maintain it as she should." Her comments always had a double meaning. On one hand, she made it clear that the house had considerable value, and on the other, she planted the idea that I was no longer capable of taking care of it properly. It was a subtle way of preparing the groundwork for what would come next. The situation became untenable when Jessica started inviting her friends over without consulting me. They would arrive in the afternoons and take over the living room as if it were their personal territory. They talked loudly, smoked cigarettes even though I asked them not to, and left the house a mess. "It's just that Mary needs to socialize more," Jessica would explain to Robert when he arrived and found the house full of strangers. "Isolation isn't good for a person her age." What she was really doing was showing her friends how easy it was to take control of my home, and probably also planning for future witnesses to my supposed mental incapacity. The day I found one of her friends, Carla, searching the drawers in my bedroom, I knew Jessica's plan had escalated to a completely different level. "Oh, sorry, Mary," Carla said brazenly when I discovered her. "Jessica told me to look for some headache pills in your nightstand." Of course, Jessica hadn't asked me for any pills, and when I confronted her, she looked at me with that icy smile that scared me so much. "Mary, no one was searching anything," she told me with a firm voice. "Carla was just looking for a tissue because she felt sick. See how your paranoia is getting worse." That night, when I checked my belongings, I discovered that the copy of my apartment deed that I always kept in my nightstand drawer was missing. When I told Robert, he looked at me as if I had completely lost my mind. "Mom, you're delirious," he said with a mixture of pity and frustration. "Why would Jessica want the papers for the house? She has her own job, her own life. I think you really need medical help." It was at that moment that I realized my son was completely lost to me, and that Jessica had achieved exactly what she wanted: to make me look like a paranoid, incapable old woman while she took control of everything that belonged to me. The day I discovered Jessica's true plan was a Friday afternoon, when she thought I was sleeping in my room. I had pretended to take a nap after lunch, but I was actually awake, trying to process the whole nightmare my life had become. That's when I heard her voice talking on the phone in the living room, and what I heard chilled my blood. "Yes, Dr. Smith, I understand the procedure perfectly," she was saying with that calculating voice I knew so well. "My mother-in-law is showing clear signs of senile dementia, She forgets where she puts things, has episodes of paranoia, and yesterday she even tried to physically assault me. Every word was a carefully constructed lie, but it sounded so convincing that even I would have doubted my own sanity if I didn't know the truth. "How long does the involuntary commitment process take?" she continued asking, because the situation at home is becoming very dangerous. My husband is very worried about everyone's safety. My heart began to pound so hard that I feared she might hear it from the living room. "Perfect. Then we need you to evaluate her and issue the corresponding medical certificate," Jessica continued. "I'll make sure my husband is present during the evaluation so he can confirm all the episodes we've witnessed." After a pause, she added something that made me tremble with terror. "Once she is committed, we can proceed with the sale of the apartment to cover the medical expenses, right?" There was the naked, raw truth. Jessica not only wanted to get rid of me, but she was also planning to sell my apartment, my home, the place where I had built my whole life with my late husband, the property that had cost so much work and so many years of sacrifice to buy. "Excellent, Dr. Smith," Jessica concluded. "We'll see you next Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And remember, it's very important that the medical certificate is convincing because we might face resistance from some family members." When she hung up the phone, I remained paralyzed in my bed, feeling as if the world had collapsed around me. That night, when Robert got home from work, Jessica told him her prepared version of events. "Honey, your mum had another very strong episode today," she said while serving dinner. "She yelled horrible things at me, and when I tried to calm her down, she tried to hit me with your dad's cane." Of course, I had never touched my husband's cane, which rested peacefully in the closet as a sacred memory. "Are you okay, Jessica?" Robert asked with genuine concern, taking his wife's hands as if she were the victim. "Did she hurt you?" Seeing my own son showing more compassion for that manipulator than for his own mother broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. "She didn't hurt me physically," Jessica replied with that dramatic performance she had perfectly mastered. "But Robert, I'm really scared. Your mum isn't the same person we knew. I think she needs urgent professional help." Her eyes filled with fake tears as she spoke, and my son fell completely into her trap. "You're right," Robert said with determination. "Tomorrow I'm going to look for information about geriatric specialists. My mum needs medical attention, and if that means committing her for her own good, then that's what we'll do." Hearing my son talk about committing me as if I were a sick animal made me feel a desperation I had never experienced before. The next day, Saturday, Jessica intensified her isolation strategy. When my sister, Susan, called to invite me to lunch at her house, Jessica picked up the phone before I could answer. "Hello, Susan. This is Jessica," she said, with that sugary voice she used to deceive everyone. "Mary can't go today because she had a very difficult night. The doctor recommended that she avoid outings until we stabilize her medication." "What medication?" I yelled from my room, but Jessica had already hung up the phone. When I tried to call Susan to explain the truth, I discovered that Jessica had disconnected the phone in my room during the night. It was like being in a prison where the bars closed tighter and tighter every day. "Jessica, why can't I talk to my sister?" I asked when I confronted her in the kitchen. She looked at me with that false expression of concern she had perfected during months of manipulation. "Mary, dear, it's just that when you talk to Susan, you get very agitated," she replied condescendingly. "Yesterday, after her call, you were very restless all night. The doctor says you need absolute tranquility." Of course, there was no doctor, but Jessica knew exactly how to make her lies sound credible. On Sunday morning, while Jessica was in the shower, I took the opportunity to check her purse, which she had left on the dining room table. My heart almost stopped when I found a folder full of documents with my name on them. There were commitment forms, fake medical evaluations with future dates, and most terrifying of all, a power of attorney granting her total control over my assets and property. I also found a copy of my apartment deed, the same one that had disappeared from my room weeks ago. In the margins, there were handwritten notes with different prices, as if she had been calculating the property's value for a quick sale. There were numbers ranging between $80,000 and $120,000, depending on market conditions. But what impacted me the most was finding a series of photographs of me taken without my knowledge. In the photos, I appeared in situations that seemed compromising, talking to myself while cooking, looking for something in the drawers with a confused expression, and even one where I was crying in my room. Jessica had been documenting moments taken out of context to use as evidence of my supposed dementia. "What are you doing?" Jessica screamed when she came out of the bathroom and found me with her purse open, her face completely transformed, showing her true self for the first time without any mask. "You nosy old woman." "These are documents with my name on them," I replied, trembling but with firmness. "You have commitment forms and papers for my apartment. What are you planning to do?" My voice broke as I spoke those words because I already knew the answer. "What I'm planning to do is save you from yourself," she said with a coldness that gave me chills. "You're sick, Mary. Your mind no longer works correctly, and someone has to make the difficult decisions that you can no longer make." Her transformation from sweet daughter-in-law to calculating predator was so fast it left me speechless. "Robert is never going to let you commit me," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "He knows I'm not crazy." But even as I said those words, I knew my son had been completely poisoned against me. "Robert," Jessica laughed cruelly. "Robert was the one who asked me to look for commitment options. He is convinced that you are a danger to yourself and to us." Her words were like daggers straight to the heart, because I knew she was probably telling the truth. "Besides," Jessica continued, approaching me with a malevolent smile, "who is going to believe you? You're a paranoid old woman who says her daughter-in-law wants to commit her to steal her house. That sounds exactly like something someone with senile dementia would say, don't you think?" At that moment, I realized how brilliantly diabolical her plan was. Jessica had constructed such a perfect narrative that any attempt by me to defend myself would only confirm her accusations of paranoia and dementia. It was a psychological trap from which escape seemed impossible. "Dr. Smith is coming to evaluate you on Tuesday," Jessica informed me, while gathering her documents and putting them back in her purse. "And I assure you that after that evaluation, you will be in a place where you will finally receive the attention you need." The way she said attention made me understand that she meant sedatives and confinement, not real medical care. "And don't even think about trying to escape or calling anyone," Jessica added before leaving the kitchen. "Because if you do, I'll tell Robert you had another violent episode and tried to flee the house in a state of confusion." Do you know what that would mean for your medical evaluation? That afternoon, when Robert returned from work, I tried once more to make him understand the truth about his wife. "Son, please listen to me," I begged, taking his hands. "Jessica isn't who you think she is. She is planning to commit me to take my apartment." Robert looked at me with that expression of pity mixed with frustration that had become so familiar in recent weeks. "Mum, do you hear yourself when you talk?" he replied tiredly. "You are accusing my wife of wanting to rob you. Don't you realize how paranoid that sounds?" "But I saw the documents," I insisted desperately. "She has commitment forms and papers for the house. Even photographs of me that she took without me knowing." My voice grew sharper with every word. because I could see that he didn't believe a single word I was saying. "Mum, Jessica told me that you found her looking through her purse," Robert said, with feigned patience. "That's not okay. People don't go through others' private belongings unless they have problems with boundaries and reality." Every one of his words confirmed to me that Jessica had gotten to him first to tell him her version of events. That night, lying in my bed, I realized I was completely alone and that my time was quickly running out. On Tuesday, Jessica would bring Dr. Smith, who had probably already been bribed or deceived, to issue the commitment certificate. Once that paper was signed, my freedom would disappear forever, and Jessica would have a free pass to sell my apartment and keep all my assets. On Monday morning, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in months. If Jessica thought I was going to give up without a fight, she was very wrong. I had less than 24 hours before Dr. Smith arrived, and I needed to find some way to prove that this whole situation was a carefully orchestrated sham. My first strategy was to try to recover some evidence of Jessica's machinations. While she was showering, I searched every corner of the house looking for the folder of documents I had seen the day before. I checked her room, her closet, even under the mattress, but it was as if it had disappeared by magic. "What are you looking for, Mary?" Jessica asked when she found me in her room. She was wrapped in a towel and had that smile that now scared me so much. "Did you lose something?" Her mocking tone confirmed to me that she had moved the documents to a place where I would never find them. "I was looking for my blood pressure pills," I lied, trying to stay calm. "I thought maybe I left them here when I cleaned your room last week." I knew it was a weak excuse, but I needed to buy time. "Your pills are on your nightstand, where they have always been," Jessica replied with false patience. "See? This is exactly what I'm going to explain to the doctor tomorrow. The confusion, the disorientation, the erratic behavior. Every one of her words was like a death sentence for my freedom. I decided to change strategies and tried to contact my sister, Susan, from the kitchen phone. But when I dialed her number, I discovered that the line had been disconnected. Jessica had cut the telephone service for the whole house except for her cell phone, which she kept with her at all times. "Jessica, why isn't the phone working?" I asked when I found her calmly eating breakfast at the dining room table. She looked up from her coffee with that feigned innocence she had perfected. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," she replied, as if it were the most insignificant detail in the world. "I cancelled the landline service because no one uses house phones anymore. It's cheaper to just use cell phones." Of course, I didn't have a cell phone, because Jessica had convinced Robert that it was too complicated for someone my age. My despair grew when I realized I was completely isolated from the outside world. I had no phone, no keys to leave the apartment, and no way to communicate with anyone who could help me. Jessica had built a perfect prison around me. "You know what, Mary?" Jessica said, while spreading jam on her toast. "I think we should get you ready for the doctor's visit tomorrow. Maybe you should take a shower and put on that pink dress you like so much. We want you to look your best." Her request sounded innocent, but I knew she wanted me to look presentable for the evaluation that would determine my fate. During the rest of the morning, Jessica behaved in a strangely kind way toward me. She made me breakfast, offered me tea, and even put on soft music on the radio. It was as if she were celebrating her anticipated victory, savoring the last moments before getting rid of me forever. "Mary, do you remember when I first came to this house?" she asked me while pretending to clean the living room. "You were so sweet to me, so welcoming. You told me you considered me the daughter you never had." Her words were full of cruel irony, reminding me of my own naivety. "Too bad things have changed so much," she continued with false sadness. "But I guess that's life. People get old, their minds deteriorate, and someone else has to take control. The casual way she talked about destroying my life made me feel nauseous. Around noon, I heard the sound of keys in the door. My heart raced, thinking that maybe Robert was coming home early from work. But when the door opened, a woman I had never seen before walked in. She was young, blonde, dressed in expensive, elegant clothes, and had the same calculating smile as Jessica. "Marissa!" Jessica exclaimed, hugging the stranger. "I'm so glad you could come." They acted like old friends, but there was something about their interaction that immediately put me on alert. "Jessica, dear, everything is ready for tomorrow," Marissa said in a low voice, but loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen where I was pretending to wash the dishes. "Dr. Smith already has all the forms prepared, and the nursing home has a room available starting Wednesday." "Perfect," Jessica replied with satisfaction. "And what about the apartment? Did you contact the real estate agent?" Her words confirmed my worst fears. They weren't just planning to commit me. They already had everything organized to sell my home immediately afterward. "I already have 3 interested buyers," Marissa continued. "One of them is willing to pay $110,000 in cash if we close the sale before Friday." Hearing 2 strangers discuss the price of my apartment as if it were merchandise filled me with a rage I hadn't felt in years. "Excellent," Jessica said, rubbing her hands with greed. "Once we have the mental incapacity certificate, I can activate the power of attorney and proceed with the sale immediately." It was evident that she had planned every detail of her scheme with military precision. I couldn't stand it anymore, and entered the living room where they were talking. "Who is this woman?" I asked them directly. "And why are you talking about selling my apartment?" My voice trembled with indignation, but I tried to maintain my composure. "Mary, this is Marissa, my cousin," Jessica explained with that fake smile. "She's a real estate agent and came to give us some advice on property values in this area." Of course, it was another carefully constructed lie. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Mary," Marissa said with false courtesy. "Jessica has told me a lot about you. I'm so sorry to hear you are going through such difficult times." Her feigned compassion was so transparent that I wanted to slap her. "I am not going through any difficult times," I replied firmly. "The only difficult thing is living with people who plan to steal my home." My direct accusation made Marissa and Jessica exchange a significant look. "Mary, dear," Jessica said condescendingly, "do you see what I mean? The paranoia is getting worse every day." She addressed Marissa as if I weren't present. "She thinks we are all conspiring against her. It's very sad to see her like this." "It's understandable," Marissa replied, playing along. "My grandmother went through the same thing before we had to make difficult decisions for her own good." The way they talked about me in the third person, as if I were invisible, made me feel as if I were already dead to them. That afternoon, after Marissa left, Jessica became more aggressive with me. "Tomorrow, when Dr. Smith arrives, you are going to behave politely," she ordered in a menacing voice. "You are not going to make dramatic scenes or invent paranoid stories about robberies and conspiracies." "And if I don't?" I asked defiantly. I had nothing left to lose, so I decided to confront her directly. "What are you going to do? Hit me in front of the doctor?" "I don't need to hit you," Jessica replied with an icy smile. "With your erratic behavior today, I have enough evidence to prove that you are a danger to yourself." She took out her cell phone and showed me several video recordings she had taken without me knowing. In the videos, I appeared frantically searching her room, talking aloud to myself while cooking, and even crying in my room. All the moments had been taken out of context, but for someone who didn't know the true situation, they certainly seemed like symptoms of dementia or mental instability. "This is what Dr. Smith is going to see tomorrow," Jessica informed me, putting the phone away. Videos of an old woman who searches other people's rooms, who talks to herself, who cries for no apparent reason, and who accuses her family of wanting to rob her. Her plan was so perfect that even I had begun to doubt my own sanity. That night, as I lay in my bed, unable to sleep, I realized that I had completely underestimated Jessica's intelligence and cruelty. She wasn't just a manipulative daughter-in-law, but a professional predator who had probably done this before with other victims. And tomorrow, with the arrival of Dr. Smith, her plan would be completed, and my life as I knew it would come to an end. Tuesday dawned grey and rainy, as if the weather had decided to accompany the darkest day of my life. I woke up before sunrise with a churning stomach and trembling hands. In a few hours, Dr. Smith would arrive, and with him my fate would be sealed. Jessica had orchestrated everything so perfectly that it seemed impossible to escape her trap. At 7 o'clock in the morning, I heard voices in the kitchen. Jessica was talking on the phone, probably confirming the final details of her diabolical plan. "Yes, doctor." She was very agitated all night, she lied, with that concerned voice she had perfected. "My husband and I are very scared. Yesterday she tried to leave the house in her underwear, insisting she had to go to work at the hospital where she retired 5 years ago." Of course, I had never tried to leave in my underwear, nor had I mentioned going to the hospital. But Jessica knew exactly what kind of stories would sound convincing to a doctor who had already been prepared to diagnose senile dementia. "Perfect. We'll see you at 3 o'clock sharp," Jessica concluded. "And doctor, please bring all the necessary forms for the commitment. We can't wait any longer. The situation is truly critical." Every one of her words was like a nail in the coffin of my freedom. When I went down for breakfast, Jessica greeted me with a smile that chilled my blood. "Good morning, dear Mary," she said with false sweetness. "Did you sleep well? I hope you are prepared for your doctor's appointment today." The way she said "doctor's appointment" made it clear that she knew exactly what was going to happen. "Jessica, please," I begged one last time. "Don't do this. I never hurt you." "Why do you want to destroy my life?" My voice broke as I spoke those words because I knew it was useless to appeal to a compassion she had never possessed. "Mary, no one wants to destroy your life," she replied with that performance of concern she used to manipulate everyone. "We just want you to get the help you need. It's for your own good." Her words sounded so rehearsed that it was evident she had practiced that speech many times. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Robert arrived. He had asked for time off work to be present during the medical evaluation. When I saw him enter the door, my heart filled with one last hope. Maybe, at the last minute, my son would remember who his mother really was and defend me. "Hello, Mum," he said, with a mixture of sadness and determination. "How are you feeling today?" There was something in his tone that indicated Jessica had already prepared him for what he was about to witness. "I feel fine, son," I replied, taking his hands. "Robert, I need you to listen to me. Jessica isn't who you think she is. She is planning to commit me to take my apartment. You have to believe me." It was my last chance to make him understand the truth. Robert looked at me with that expression of pity that had become so familiar. "Mum, Jessica told me about your episodes of paranoia," he said with feigned patience. "I know these ideas seem real to you, but you need professional help to distinguish between reality and your fears." "But son, I'm not paranoid," I insisted desperately. "Yesterday I saw commitment documents with my name on them. Jessica already has everything planned. She even contacted buyers for the apartment." My voice grew sharper because I could see that he didn't believe a single word I was saying. "Mum, do you hear yourself when you talk?" Robert asked with frustration. You are accusing my wife of conspiring to rob you. That's not normal. A mentally healthy person doesn't think that way. His words confirmed that Jessica had completely poisoned his mind against me. Jessica appeared in the living room at that moment, as if she had been waiting for the perfect moment to make her triumphant entrance. "Robert, darling, you're here," she said, giving him a kiss on the cheek. "Your mum is a little agitated today. I think she knows the doctor is coming, and that makes her nervous." "It's understandable," Robert replied, hugging his wife. "It must be confusing for her not to understand why she needs medical attention." Seeing my son show more compassion for that manipulator than for his own mother broke my heart into pieces. The hours passed with torturous slowness. Jessica watched me constantly, as if she feared I would do something desperate. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she forced me to change clothes and comb my hair to make a good impression on Dr. Smith. "Put on that green dress that suits you so well," she ordered while checking my closet. "And let me help you with your hair. We want you to look your best." Her false request made me nauseous, because I knew she wanted me to look presentable for the evaluation that would seal my fate. At 3 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. My heart began to pound so hard that I thought it would burst out of my chest. Jessica ran to open it with a radiant smile, as if she were welcoming an honored guest instead of the executioner of my freedom. "Dr. Smith, how punctual," Jessica exclaimed with feigned enthusiasm. "Please come in. Mary is waiting for you." Her performance was so convincing that even I would have believed she genuinely cared about my well-being. Dr. Smith was a man in his 50s, tall, with a grey beard and glasses. He wore a dark suit and carried a leather briefcase that probably contained all the necessary forms to commit me. His expression was serious but kind, like someone who is used to making difficult decisions about the lives of others. "Mrs. Mary," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I am Dr. John Smith, a geriatrician specializing in dementia. Your family asked me to come and evaluate you because they are concerned about some changes in your behavior." His voice sounded professional and competent, but I knew he had already been influenced by Jessica's version. "Doctor, I feel perfectly fine," I replied, trying to stay calm. "I don't know why my family thinks I need a medical evaluation. Maybe they are the ones who need help." I knew those words would sound defensive, but it was the truth. "It's understandable that you feel that way," the doctor replied with professional patience. "Many people in your situation don't perceive the changes that others notice. That's why it's important to do an objective evaluation." His words confirmed that he had already decided my diagnosis before arriving. Jessica approached the doctor with the folder I had seen days ago. "Doctor, here is the evidence of the episodes I mentioned to you on the phone," she said, handing him the documents. "Videos, photographs, and a detailed log of all the incidents over the last few months." As the doctor reviewed the contents of the folder, I could see the satisfaction in Jessica's eyes. She had built a case so solid against me that it was practically impossible to refute. Every photograph, every video, every false document had been carefully prepared to support her narrative of senile dementia. "I see you have documented everything very meticulously," the doctor told Jessica with approval. "This is going to help us a lot to make an accurate diagnosis." His words sounded like a death sentence for my hopes of freedom. "Doctor, all of that is lies," I tried to explain desperately. "Jessica has been manipulating the evidence to make me look crazy. She wants to commit me to take my apartment." Even as I spoke, I knew my words only confirmed the diagnosis he had already decided. "Mrs. Mary," the doctor said to me with professional condescension, "those are exactly the kind of paranoid ideas your family described to me. The belief that others are conspiring to harm you is a very common symptom in cases of senile dementia." Every one of his words was like another nail in the coffin of my legal sanity. At that moment, I realized that everything was lost. Jessica had orchestrated everything so perfectly that any attempt by me to defend myself only confirmed her diagnosis. It was a psychological trap from which there was no possible escape. And she knew it. Dr. Smith opened his briefcase and took out a series of official forms and a digital recorder. "We are going to do a complete evaluation," he announced, while arranging his materials on the dining room table. "Mrs. Mary, I need you to answer some questions honestly. Your family can remain present as witnesses." Jessica sat next to Robert on the couch with that feigned expression of concern she had perfected over months. My son held her hand, as if she were the one who needed emotional support instead of his own mother, who was being evaluated for involuntary commitment. "First question," the doctor began, consulting his papers. "Can you tell me what day it is today and where you are located?" It was a basic orientation question, but I knew that every one of my answers would be analyzed for signs of dementia. "It is Tuesday. We are in my apartment on Maple Street, number 247, and you are here because my daughter-in-law convinced you that I am crazy so she can commit me and steal my property," I replied with all the clarity possible. I knew my answer was technically correct, but that the part about Jessica would sound paranoid. The doctor exchanged a meaningful look with Jessica before writing something in his notebook. "Mrs. Mary, have you noticed any changes in your memory lately? Do you often forget where you put things?" His questions were clearly designed to confirm a predetermined diagnosis. "Doctor, my memory is perfect," I replied firmly. "The only problem I have is that someone is moving my belongings without my permission. Yesterday, my keys mysteriously disappeared, and when I looked for them, Jessica said I had lost them due to my supposed mental confusion." "Exactly what I told you on the phone," Jessica interrupted, addressing the doctor. "She believes we are hiding her things, when in reality, she puts them in strange places and then doesn't remember doing it." Her performance was so convincing that even I would have doubted my own version if I didn't know the truth. The doctor continued with more questions about my daily routine, my family relationships, and my current concerns. Every answer I gave was interpreted through the filter of senile dementia that Jessica had implanted in his mind. If I appeared calm, it was because I didn't understand the seriousness of my situation. If I got upset, it was evidence of emotional instability. "Mrs. Mary," the doctor asked me after reviewing Jessica's notes, "your daughter-in-law tells me that you have recently had episodes of aggression. Can you explain what makes you feel angry?" It was a trick question designed to make me look violent, no matter how I answered. "Doctor, I have never been aggressive," I explained, trying to stay calm. "Jessica is the one who abuses me. She has pushed me, yelled at me, threatened me. But when I try to defend myself or tell my son, she says I'm the one who provokes her." My voice rose slightly because it was frustrating that no one believed me. "See what I mean?" Jessica whispered to the doctor, loud enough for me to hear. "These unfounded accusations are constant. She believes I mistreat her when all I do is care for her with love and patience." Her fake tears appeared at the exact moment to complete her performance. Robert approached and took my hand with an expression of sadness. "Mum, Jessica has never hurt you," he said with a broken voice. "She takes care of you. She prepares your food. She worries about you. Why do you think she wants to hurt you?" Seeing the sincerity in his eyes made me understand that he truly believed I was losing my mind. "Because she wants my apartment," I replied desperately. "Son, yesterday I heard Jessica talking on the phone about selling the house for $110,000. She already has buyers ready and is just waiting for this doctor to declare me incompetent." I knew my words would sound like paranoid delusions, but it was my last chance to make Robert understand. Dr. Smith made more notes in his notebook while shaking his head. Mrs. Mary, ideas of persecution related to property or money are very common in patients with cognitive impairment, he explained with professional condescension. Your mind is trying to find logical explanations for the changes you are experiencing. Doctor, could you check Jessica's phone? I begged desperately. The recordings of her conversations with apartment buyers are there. She also has videos of me that she took without my permission to use as false evidence. It was my last attempt to prove the truth. Jessica immediately got up from the couch with an expression of feigned indignation. Doctor, do you see how she is? Now she wants you to check my private phone, because she thinks I have evidence of a non-existent conspiracy. Her performance as an offended victim was so perfect that the doctor looked at her with compassion. Mrs. Jessica, I understand this must be very difficult for you, the doctor said sympathetically. Caring for a relative with dementia requires extraordinary patience. Your dedication is admirable, despite the accusations you must face daily. His words confirmed that he had already completely decided which side he was on. At that moment, the doctor took out a series of official forms from his briefcase. Based on my evaluation and the documentary evidence provided by the family, he announced with a formal voice, my diagnosis is senile dementia with paranoid symptoms and episodes of aggressiveness. I recommend immediate commitment to a specialized institution. My world completely collapsed upon hearing those words. Doctor, please, I pleaded with tears in my eyes. I'm not crazy. I am just an old woman who is the victim of an elaborate scam. Please investigate before you sign those papers. My voice broke because I knew it was already too late. Mrs. Mary, I understand this is difficult to accept, the doctor replied while signing the forms. But commitment is for your own safety and that of your family. In the institution, you will receive the medical and psychological care you need. Every stroke of his pen sealed my fate irreversibly. Jessica approached Robert and hugged him while pretending to cry with relief. Thank you, doctor, she said in a choked voice. You don't know how hard it has been to make this decision. But we knew it was the best for Mary and for all of us. Her performance as a sacrificial daughter-in-law was so convincing that even the doctor seemed moved. When can they take her? Robert asked in a trembling voice. It was evident that despite everything, it hurt him to have to commit his mother. But Jessica had convinced him that it was the only option. We want her to get help as soon as possible. The ambulance can come tomorrow morning, the doctor replied, consulting his agenda. I will call the institution to confirm that they have the room prepared. In the meantime, keep Mrs. Mary calm and prevent her from getting more upset than necessary. His instructions sounded as if he were talking about a sick animal instead of a human being. One question, doctor, Jessica said with that sweet voice she used to manipulate. Are the power of attorney forms I prepared enough to manage Mary's financial affairs while she is committed? We want to make sure all her needs are covered. Her question finally revealed her true intentions. Of course, the doctor replied without suspecting anything. With the certificate of mental incapacity that I am issuing, you will have complete legal authority over all of Mrs. Mary's affairs, including properties, bank accounts, and medical decisions. His words were like the final blow that completed the destruction of my life. Jessica couldn't completely hide her smile of satisfaction upon hearing those words. She had achieved exactly what she wanted, total control over my life and my assets. In less than 24 hours, I would be committed to a nursing home, and she would have a free pass to sell my apartment and keep all my assets. Thank you for everything, Doctor, Robert said, shaking his hand. I know this is the right decision, even though it's painful. My son truly believed he was doing what was best for me, without realizing that he had been completely manipulated by a predator who had planned everything from day one. That night, after the doctor left, I stayed alone in my room, knowing it would be my last night in the home I had built with so much effort. Tomorrow morning, the ambulance would come. They would take me to the nursing home, and Jessica would immediately begin the procedures to sell my apartment. Her diabolical plan had been executed to perfection, and I hadn't been able to do anything to stop it. I couldn't close my eyes for a second that night. Every time I heard a noise in the house, my heart raced, thinking that maybe the ambulance had arrived early. Jessica had completely won, and I would be in a nursing home before noon, while she would immediately begin the procedures to take possession of everything that belonged to me. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard voices whispering in the kitchen. I got up silently and approached my bedroom door to try to hear what they were saying. It was Jessica talking on the phone, probably with her accomplice, Marissa, organizing the final details of her plan. "Everything went perfectly," Jessica whispered with evident satisfaction in her voice. "The doctor signed all the papers without asking a single question. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock the ambulance is coming, and by Friday we can close the sale of the apartment." Her joy in speaking of my misfortune filled me with a rage I didn't know I was capable of feeling. "Yes, Marissa, you can contact the buyer," Jessica continued. "Tell him he can have the keys on Saturday if he pays the $110,000 in cash, as he promised. With that money, we can buy our own house and stop pretending we care about this crazy old woman." Her words confirmed what I had always suspected. She had never felt anything genuine for me or my family. "Robert, don't worry about him," Jessica continued cruelly. "He's so manipulated that he'll never suspect anything. He thinks I'm really doing this out of love for his mother. He's so naive that he'll probably thank me for having made the difficult decisions he couldn't make." Hearing how she mocked my son broke my heart. "Once we have the money, we'll invent some family emergency to move to another city," Jessica concluded. "Robert will never have to know that his mother died alone in a nursing home, while we spent her inheritance on vacations and luxuries." Her words chilled my blood, because she spoke of my death as if it were inevitable. I returned to my bed, trembling with horror and rage. Jessica was not only planning to rob me, but she also planned to abandon Robert once she had the money. My poor son would not only lose his mother, but he would also be betrayed by the woman he had placed all his trust in. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Jessica entered my room with a breakfast tray. "Good morning, dear Mary," she said with that fake smile that now made me nauseous. "I brought you coffee and toast. We want you to have a good breakfast before your trip." The way she said trip made it clear that she knew exactly what awaited me. "Jessica, please," I begged one last time. "Don't do this. You can keep the apartment. You can keep all my money. But don't commit me. I promise I will never tell Robert about your plans." It was a desperate lie, but I was willing to say anything to avoid the nursing home. "Oh, Mary," Jessica replied with false compassion. "It's already too late for negotiations. The papers are already signed, the ambulance is already scheduled, and your room in the nursing home is already paid for." Her words confirmed that there was no turning back. "Besides," Jessica continued, sitting on the edge of my bed, "do you really think I was going to trust you? You are too dangerous to leave loose. As soon as you had the opportunity, you would try to convince someone to help you." Her analysis was correct, and we both knew it. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Robert arrived. He had asked for another day off work to be present during my transfer to the nursing home. His eyes were red, as if he had cried all night, but his determination remained firm. "Good morning, Mom," he said, kissing me on the forehead. "How did you sleep?" His question was so innocent, that I wanted to hug him and tell him the whole truth about his wife, but I knew it was useless. "I didn't sleep at all, son," I replied honestly. "Do you really think this is the right thing to do? Committing your own mother to a nursing home?" It was my last attempt to make him reconsider his decision. Robert sighed deeply before answering. "Mum, it's the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life," he said with a broken voice. But the doctor was very clear. "You need specialized care that we cannot give you at home." The sincerity in his voice confirmed that he really believed he was doing the right thing. "And what's going to happen to the apartment afterward?" I asked directly. "Is Jessica going to stay here alone?" I wanted to see if he knew anything about his wife's sales plans. "Jessica and I are going to keep the house exactly as it is," Robert replied with conviction. "It's your home, Mum, and it always will be. Maybe when you feel better, you can come visit us on weekends." His words confirmed that he had no idea that Jessica planned to sell the property immediately. At 9:30, Jessica started packing a small suitcase with my belongings. She chose only the oldest and most worn clothes, leaving aside everything that had any value. "You don't need much at the nursing home," she explained while selecting my belongings. "They will give you uniforms and everything necessary there." "Can I take the photograph of my husband?" I asked, pointing to the portrait that had always been on my nightstand. It was the only thing I really cared about, keeping from my previous life. "Of course," Jessica replied with feigned generosity, "but we'll take a copy instead, in case it gets lost or broken during the transfer." She took the original photograph and put it away in a drawer, giving me a black and white copy she had made years ago instead. Even in that last moment, she was stealing something precious from me. At 10 o'clock sharp, we heard the ambulance siren approaching down the street. My heart began to pound so hard that I thought I was going to have a heart attack. After 66 years of independent life, I was about to become a prisoner in a nursing home, the victim of the cruelest scam I had ever experienced. "They're here," Jessica announced with a smile she couldn't completely hide. "Mary, are you ready for your new home?" Her question sounded like a cruel joke, but Robert interpreted it as genuine concern for my well-being. 2 paramedics entered the apartment with a foldable stretcher and transfer forms. They were young, professional, and clearly used to dealing with resistant elderly people who didn't want to go to a nursing home. They looked at me with the same distant compassion that they probably showed all their geriatric patients. "Mrs. Mary," the older paramedic said to me, "I'm Robert, and this is my partner Henry. We're going to take you to your new home, where you will receive the best possible care." His voice was kind but firm, making it clear that there would be no discussion about my transfer. "I don't want to go," I told them directly. "I am the victim of a scam. My daughter-in-law is stealing my apartment and committing me against my will." I knew my words would sound like the delusions of a demented old woman, but I had to try. The paramedics exchanged a knowing look before Robert replied with professional patience. "Mrs. Mary, we understand this is difficult to accept," he said condescendingly, "but Dr. Smith explained your situation to us. You will be much better cared for at the institution." Jessica approached the paramedics with fake tears in her eyes. "Please be patient with her," she asked them with a perfect performance. "The last few months have been very difficult for the whole family. We hope that in the nursing home she can find the peace and care she needs." Her performance was so convincing that the paramedics looked at her with admiration for her dedication. "Don't worry, Mom," Henry replied. "We are used to these cases. Your mother-in-law will be in the best possible hands." His words sealed my fate definitively. When they helped me get up from the bed to take me to the stretcher, my legs trembled so much that I almost fell. It wasn't just physical fear. but the complete realization that my life as I knew it had come to an end. In less than an hour, I would be in a nursing home, medicated and controlled, while Jessica started selling everything that belonged to me. "Goodbye, Mum," Robert said, hugging me with tears in his eyes. "I promise I will visit you every week. And when you feel better, you can come home." His words broke my heart, because I knew I would never see my home again, and that I probably wouldn't see my son again either after Jessica left with the money. The paramedics helped me lie down on the stretcher, while Jessica supervised every movement with that smile of satisfaction that she no longer bothered to completely hide. Robert paced nervously around the room, clearly affected by the situation, but convinced that he was doing the right thing for my supposed well-being. "Wait a moment," a voice said from the front door. It was Rose, my next-door neighbor, a 70-year-old woman who had always been very observant. "What's going on here? Why are they taking Mary away in an ambulance?" Her unexpected appearance made Jessica visibly tense. "Hello, Mrs. Rose," Jessica replied quickly, stepping between my neighbor and the stretcher. "Mary needs specialized medical attention. The doctor determined that it's the best for her mental health." Her voice sounded controlled, but I could notice a slight tremble of nervousness. Rose approached me with a worried expression. "Mary, dear, are you okay with this?" she asked, taking my hand. "Yesterday, I heard you crying in your room, and this morning I heard strange voices in your apartment." Her words made Jessica exchange a nervous glance with the paramedics. "Rose, please don't interfere," Jessica told her firmly. "This is a very difficult family decision we made for Mary's well-being. The doctor already did the corresponding evaluation." I tried to speak, but one of the paramedics had started securing the straps of the stretcher. "Mrs. Rose," Robert, the older paramedic, intervened. "We understand your concern, but we have specific medical orders. Mrs. Mary needs immediate transfer for her safety." His professional tone indicated that there would be no more discussion on the matter. Rose was not intimidated and addressed Robert directly. "Robert, son, do you really believe your mother needs to be in a nursing home?" she asked seriously. "I see her every day, and Mary has always been a perfectly lucid and capable woman." Her words made my son hesitate for a moment. "Mrs. Rose, you don't live with us," Robert replied with uncertainty. "You haven't seen the episodes we've witnessed in the last few weeks. Jessica documented everything for the doctor." It was evident that he was starting to doubt, but Jessica immediately intervened. "Rose, I understand this is shocking," Jessica said, with that manipulative voice I knew so well. "But Mary has been hiding her symptoms very well when she's in public. At home, the situation is completely different." Her explanation sounded logical to someone who didn't know the truth. At that moment, Rose did something that changed the entire course of events. She took out her cell phone and started playing an audio recording. "Last night I recorded this conversation I heard from my balcony," she announced firmly. "I think everyone should listen to it before taking Mary away." Jessica's voice came clearly from the phone. "Everything went perfectly. The doctor signed all the papers without asking a single question. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock the ambulance is coming, and by Friday we can close the sale of the apartment." The words continued, revealing the entire diabolical plan I had heard the night before. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert looked at Jessica with an expression of total shock and confusion. The paramedics stopped dead in their tracks, clearly surprised by what they had just heard. Jessica had turned completely pale and desperately tried to find an explanation. That is taken out of context," Jessica stammered in a trembling voice. "Rose must have recorded a phone conversation about someone else. I never said those things about Mary." Her excuse sounded desperate and unconvincing. "There's more," Rose continued, playing another part of the recording where Jessica could clearly be heard saying, "With that money, we can buy our own house and stop pretending we care about this crazy old woman." The words cut the air like knives, revealing Jessica's true nature. Robert slowly approached Jessica with a look I had never seen before. "Is what that recording says true?" he asked in a broken voice. "Have you been planning to sell my mother's apartment?" His hands were trembling as he waited for an answer. "Robert, honey, I can explain everything," Jessica replied, trying to take his hands, but he instinctively backed away. "Yes, I spoke with a real estate agent, but only to find out the value of the property in case we needed to sell it to pay for Mary's medical expenses." Her explanation sounded rehearsed and desperate. "And what about pretending you care about my mother?" Robert continued asking with growing indignation. "And about buying a house of our own with the money from the sale?" His voice grew louder with each question as he began to understand the magnitude of the betrayal. Rose hadn't finished revealing her evidence. "I also have photographs," she announced, showing her phone. "Yesterday I saw Jessica taking documents out of Mary's house and passing them to a blonde woman in the parking lot." The photographs clearly showed Jessica handing a folder to Marissa next to the car. The paramedics looked at each other with evident discomfort. "Sir," Robert, the paramedic, told my son, "if there are doubts about the legitimacy of this transfer, maybe we should contact Dr. Smith to clarify the situation." It was clear that they didn't want to be involved in a possible medical fraud. "No," Robert replied with increasing determination. "Cancel the transfer. My mother is not going to any nursing home until we have clear answers about this situation." He walked toward the stretcher where I was and began to loosen the straps that held me. Jessica went into complete panic, seeing her plan crumble before her eyes. "Robert, you can't do this," she screamed desperately. "Your mother is sick." The doctor confirmed it. "If you leave her here, it's going to be dangerous for everyone." Her mask of the concerned daughter-in-law had completely fallen. "The only danger here is you," Robert replied, helping me up from the stretcher. "Mom, forgive me. I didn't know. I never imagined Jessica was capable of something like this." His eyes filled with tears as he hugged me, and for the first time in months, I felt I had my son back. "Where are the keys to my apartment?" I asked Jessica directly. "The ones you hid so I couldn't leave when I needed to escape your abuse." My voice was firm because I finally had the support I needed to confront her. Jessica looked toward the door as if calculating whether she could escape, but Rose had strategically positioned herself to block her exit. "I don't know what keys you're talking about," Jessica lied, but her nervousness was evident to everyone present. "Find them," Robert ordered, with an authority he hadn't shown in months. "Right now. And I want to see all the documents you've been hiding." His transformation from manipulated husband to protective son was complete and definitive. Rose approached me with a triumphant smile. "Mary, dear, I knew something wasn't right," she said, taking my hand. "The walls of these apartments are thin, and I've been hearing very strange conversations for weeks." Her bravery in intervening had saved my life and my freedom. The paramedics started gathering their equipment, clearly relieved not to have to complete a transfer that now seemed fraudulent. "Sir, we are going to report this situation to our supervisors," Robert, the paramedic, informed my son. "And we recommend that you contact the authorities if you suspect criminal activity." At that moment, I realized that the nightmare was finally over. Jessica had been exposed, Robert had come to his senses, and I was not going to be committed against my will. But I knew that the final confrontation was still to come, and that Jessica would not give up without a fight until the very last moment. Jessica realized that her world of lies had completely collapsed and adopted a desperate and aggressive attitude that she had never shown in front of Robert. "Fine," she screamed with bloodshot eyes. "Yes, I was planning to sell this damn apartment. And yes, I wanted to get rid of this unbearable old woman who ruined my marriage from day one." Her complete confession left Robert in total shock. My son stepped back as if he had been physically slapped, looking at the woman he had married as if she were a complete stranger. "Jessica, how could you do this to me and my mother?" he asked in a broken voice. "Do this to you?" Jessica laughed bitterly. "Robert, you're so naive. Since we got married, you've been more worried about your precious mummy than your own wife. This house stinks of old age and dead memories. I deserved something better." Her true personality emerged like a poison that had been contained for years. Rose continued recording the entire confession with her cell phone, making sure to capture every incriminating word. The paramedics remained as silent witnesses to the explosion of truths they were witnessing. It was like watching an actor remove a mask to reveal their real, monstrous face. "Where is Dr. Smith?" Robert asked with growing indignation. "Is he also involved in your plan?" His question made Jessica even more nervous, as if he had touched an especially sensitive point. "John Smith is a real doctor," Jessica admitted reluctantly. "But I paid him $5,000 to sign the papers without asking questions. I told him it was for the good of a rich old woman who was squandering her family's inheritance." Her confession revealed that the doctor's corruption had been an integral part of her scheme. Robert immediately walked toward the house phone to call the police, but Jessica lunged at him, trying to stop him. "You can't do this," she screamed as they struggled. "I'm your wife. You promised to love and protect me." "Everything I did was for our future." Her desperation had made her completely irrational. "Get away from my son!" I yelled, stepping between them. For the first time in months, I felt I had the strength and the right to defend myself and my family. Jessica shoved me violently, making me fall onto the couch, but this time there were witnesses to her aggression. "That's enough!" Robert roared with a rage I had never seen in him before. "Rose, call the police immediately. This woman is going to pay for everything she has done." His transformation from deceived husband to protective son was complete and definitive. Jessica desperately headed for the door, but Rose bravely blocked her, surprisingly strong for a woman her age. "You're not going anywhere until the police arrive," she told her firmly. "I've been documenting your activities for weeks, and I have enough evidence to make sure you pay for your crimes." "Let go of me, you nosy old woman," Jessica yelled at Rose, trying to push her. "This is none of your business. You're just a gossipy neighbor who has nothing better to do." Her disrespect toward Rose confirmed her true, despicable character. The paramedics decided to stay as witnesses until the authorities arrived. "Ma'am," Robert, the paramedic, told Jessica, "we recommend that you calm down and wait to speak with the police. Anything you say or do now can be used against you." His professional advice fell on deaf ears because Jessica was completely out of control. "Where are the keys to my apartment?" I asked her again with renewed authority. "And I want all the documents you stole from my room." My voice was firm because I finally had the necessary support to confront my tormentor. Jessica looked at me with pure hatred before taking the keys out of her pocket and throwing them onto the floor with contempt. "There are your damn keys," she screamed, as if they had any value. "This apartment is worth a fortune and you are wasting it living here like a hermit." Her confession about the value of my property confirmed her financial motives. Robert picked up the keys from the floor and handed them to me with tears in his eyes. "Mum, forgive me for taking away your freedom to move around in your own house," he said with a broken voice. I should never have believed that you were the problem." His sincere apology began to heal the wounds Jessica had caused in our relationship. At that moment, the police arrived, alerted by Rose's call. 2 officers entered the apartment and quickly assessed the situation. The presence of the paramedics, Rose's recordings, and Jessica's confessions made the case very clear to the authorities. "Ma'am," the older officer told Jessica, "you are under arrest for attempted fraud, falsification of documents, and elder abuse." As they read her rights, Jessica continued screaming accusations and threats that only worsened her legal situation. "This is unfair," Jessica protested as they handcuffed her. "Mary is a problematic old woman who needs supervision. I was just trying to help my family." Her desperate excuses didn't convince anyone, because the evidence against her was overwhelming. Rose handed all her recordings and photographs to the police as evidence. "Officers, I have been documenting this woman's suspicious activities for weeks," she explained proudly. "I have phone conversations, photographs of document transactions, and evidence of verbal abuse toward Mary." Her meticulousness had been key to exposing the crime. The officer took statements from everyone present, including the paramedics who had witnessed Jessica's confessions. "Mrs. Mary," he told me with respect, "I am very sorry for what you have had to go through. We are going to make sure that justice is served in this case." His words gave me a sense of validation that I hadn't felt in months. As they took Jessica away in handcuffs, she looked at me one last time with a hatred that gave me chills. "This isn't over, old woman," she yelled as they dragged her toward the police car. "When I get out of jail, I'm going to get revenge on all of you." Her threats confirmed that she never felt remorse for her actions. Robert approached me after the police left and hugged me with an intensity I hadn't felt since he was a child. "Mum, I swear I will never doubt you again," he promised with tears streaming down his cheeks. Jessica completely manipulated me, but that doesn't excuse me not trusting my own mother. His sincere repentance began to rebuild the bridges Jessica had burned. Rose stayed with us to make sure I was okay after the trauma. "Mary, dear, I always knew something wasn't right," she said while preparing tea for everyone. "A woman who has worked all her life and raised a wonderful son doesn't lose her mind overnight." Her unwavering support had been my salvation. That night, for the first time in months, I lay down in my own bed, feeling safe and free in my own home. Jessica was in jail, Robert had come to his senses, and Rose had become an invaluable ally. My nightmare was over, but the emotional scars would take time to heal. The next day, Robert and I went to the bank to change all the passwords for my accounts and check for any suspicious transactions Jessica might have made. We discovered that she had stolen almost $3,000 in small amounts over the last few months, but fortunately the bulk of my savings remained intact. We also contacted a lawyer to begin divorce proceedings and make sure Jessica couldn't claim any rights over my properties or Robert's. The lawyer assured us that with all the evidence we had, the case would be relatively straightforward. Weeks later, during the trial, Jessica was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud, falsification of documents, and elder abuse. Dr. Smith was also arrested and lost his medical license for accepting bribes to falsify diagnoses. Justice had finally prevailed. Robert and I slowly rebuilt our relationship, with the help of family therapy, to heal the damage Jessica had caused. He moved to his own apartment but came to visit me every day, and we had dinner together on Sundays, just like we used to before she came into our lives. Rose became my best friend and confidant. Her bravery in intervening when I needed her most had saved my life, and I can never thank her enough. Now we have coffee together every afternoon and watch each other's apartments as a neighborhood security system. My story became a warning to other families about the dangers of predators who prey on the elderly. I gave several interviews to raise awareness about these crimes and help other victims recognize the signs of abuse before it's too late. Today, 6 months after my nightmare, I live peacefully in my apartment with the assurance that Jessica can no longer harm me. I have learned to trust my instincts again and not to let anyone make me doubt my own sanity. My son has learned a valuable lesson about manipulation, and our relationship is stronger than ever. The experience taught me that it's never too late to fight for justice, and that there will always be good people willing to help if we have the courage to ask for help. Jessica thought she had won, but in the end, the truth and true family always prevail over evil and greed.